Washington's new leisure centre. Well, not really that new, but years ago this footpath was to go straight through the middle. So on the right you would have the swim baths and the swash courts, and on the left you would have the gym. As you can see now, it's all changed. There's the police station. I once applied for a job there, but I was told I was too small, so they give us some pamphlets and some sweets. I think as well, I was only 9 at the time, so I might have something to do with why no one gives the job, but hey, what can we say? So as you may have guessed, there's no mountains or anything here today, but this is just me really going back in time a bit. When I look around places where I used to play, where I grew up, and see how much they've changed. I think here we are in Penshaw Park in Washington, and this used to be a popular path, because when I was training for the Royal Marines, I used to live at Penshaw at the time, so I would run across to Washington Leisure Centre. I would swim a mile in the pool, because I was told 64 lengths was a mile, and then I would run back. I'd run back along here, because I'm hoping if it's still here. There used to be exercise equipment where you could work out, but I know they'll be well gone now, or if not, they'll be pretty much overgrown, but we'll see. So this is one of the old exercise equipment, and I'm pretty sure they just have little bars sticking out, so you put your feet on the bars and you'll be able to do your press-ups on them. And there used to be another one along here where you could do your chin-ups, so hopefully that's still here. I'll be able to show you that. It just proves some things never change. When I was a kid, there used to be a rope swing over here, but when I was a kid it was on that side on the trees, I think. Can't remember it being on this side. May have been, but obviously over the years kids still swing here. So a little history about Washington. This years ago it was just all little villages, and then it got designated as a new town. So they did a lot of building, built new roads, joined all the villages up, and when they did that, I can't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure they tried to model it off the American system or something like that. So instead of Albany called Albany and such, it was called District 1, District 2, District 3, and then, I can't remember how many years ago it was, we had a referendum, and the council was asking us, do you want to stay with the district names, or do we change it to actually the proper names? And I think it was an overwhelming vote for the proper names, so they changed all the signposts for the roads and that, took away all the district numbers, and now all the signs point to all the little villages. But I think it was a bit of a daft idea in the first place, naming districts 1 and 2, because I think Washington Galleries, that was split in two. That was like 2 districts, even though it was just one place. So just goes to prove how ridiculous it was. And this is another area I used to play with when kids. Just come down here, we just go swimming in that. Would I actually go swimming in that now? I don't think so. I never knew that. Well, I've been down here a few times and I've done the sea to sea, but this used to be an old railway line. So unless the Network Rail still owns the land, I'm not sure. Here we have Worm Hill, which is down next to Fatfield. So there was an old folklore story about this where, remember rightly, a boy was fishing in the River Wear, which was down there, caught a worm, all things. I can't really remember what he did. I think he chucked it away or something, but anyway, the worm grew and it wrapped itself around Worm Hill 10 times, and then I think it was Lord somebody came along, had a big fight with the worm, killed it, chopped it up and chucked it in the river. But there used to be a war memorial on the top, but the Yobs, they came along, vandalised it, so they moved it and they put it down next to, I think it's the taxi rank. The taxi rank's still down there. But we won't be seeing that because I'm going actually over the bridge. So this is the war memorial, which I was talking about earlier on, which used to be on the top of Worm Hill. As I said, I think I'm pretty sure the vandals were vandalising it or something, so they've actually moved it and brought it down here, so it's in a safer place. But at the end of the day, why would you vandalise a war memorial? You know, these people gave their lives so you have the life you got now. It just makes you sick. That looks nice. So I think this tree, they look amazing. All these trees really look amazing when they're in full bloom. Again, when I was a kid, all these houses, it was all fields. And one year we walked across one of the fields and it was full of what we thought were cows. Then they started to come towards us, so we were looking at them. Then they're not going to charge, are they? So we started walking a bit faster, then they started going faster. Then all of a sudden they did start charging us. We had to run like the clappers to get out of the field. Must have been about 15-20 of them. After we panicked ourselves, to be polite. But there's a funny story to these houses. I know the people who live here probably won't think it's funny, but we did when they were built, because we used to call this whole area the duck pond, because during the winter this whole area was flood. But anyway, for some reason the land got sold so people could build their own houses on here. They'd buy the land. It was like a self-build, I think they were, and every year come winter they were all just underwater. I think it lasted for a couple of years before the council got around to putting in proper drainage to fix the issue, but just ridiculous. Everybody around this area said, why would you build houses on like a floodplain, or as we called it, the duck pond. But that's what happens, I suppose. People build houses nowadays, or not bothered where they build them, just as long as you get the money. And there's the homeowners who have all the issues when the buildings get flooded or they can't get insurance. This just looks so different from when I was a kid, I suppose, looking through kids' eyes. But I just remember this being thick undergrowth. I remember the trees were here, but you couldn't see across the other side because it's just so thick. Looks like it's all been cut back. A bit different. But me and one of my friends actually got beat up here once by the gamekeeper and his cronies when we were coming up. We were heading back to Shiny Row, so one of my friends lived, and they were coming down towards us, and for some reason he thought we'd been chasing the pheasants. God knows. Anyway, so they decided that some of the big boys with them should beat us up, which at the time I think we were only 9, possibly 10 at the time. Well, we couldn't fight 16-year-old kids. I think we were about 16 anyway. They're a lot taller than us, that's for certain. So it wasn't really an even fight, but that's just really how life wasn't in them days when we were a kid. So I was a kid, we used to get out into these woods. I remember one day we'd all came down, all our cousins, family, because we'd been to one of my relations for Sunday dinner. And again, we're only young, I don't know, about 6, 7 I think at this time it was. And we actually got lost in these woods. And all our parents came looking for us, found us. And I remember one of my uncles took his belt off and whacked one of my cousins over the backside, or the bum, with his belt, because he was blaming her for taking us into the woods. But as I said earlier, you know, doing that nowadays, people would go, shock, gasp, horror. You know, in them days when we were kids, it was pretty much the norm, you know. You go to school, and if there was anything wrong at school, you get the cane, you get the strap, you get the blackboard rubber thrown at you, you get the ruler thrown at you, you know. None of that nowadays. But yeah, this is where I still got a path where we went in and got lost. See how things have changed. This used to be all fields where we used to go and play. Now, so behind all these trees are the new housing estates, which is built on fields. It just sometimes feels as if your history of your childhood has been erased, because everywhere you go nowadays things have changed so much. Houses are being built on old playing grounds. Well, my first ever school is still here, but it was nothing like this. It was an old school. So obviously that's been knocked down sometime in the past, in this new school built in this place. You know, as you can see, my old school, secondary school, it's now a housing estate. I see that's as I go across the burn. This looks absolutely tiny. God, when I was at school, this was huge, you know, just try and get across here. You felt like tough boys, we didn't want to go over this bridge. But look how it is. It's absolutely tiny. So my first job when I left the Royal Marines was a bus driver, which used to be here at Philadelphia Bus Depot, which, as we can see now, looks like it's going to be a housing estate. I remember all this just used to be fields with horses in, and it's now going to become a housing estate. So those houses there, that used to be the old train works, and when I was a kid we came down, we saw I don't know what train it was now, we saw Flying Scotsman. We came down here and the Flying Scotsman was parked up in the yard, so we were allowed in to look around. So I'm trying to remember what this used to be kind of can't remember. I know it was something for certain. Or was this where the old train works used to be? Possibly. I think in the way it's fenced off, I think this is going to get flattened pretty soon. More houses built around here. I think when I get in, I'm going to have to Google, it's on my mind, to Google up what this place used to be. I just cannot remember. So that building through the trees was my first ever job on a YTS scheme. I worked there, first of all I started in the warehouse, and then I managed to go into the garage. But it was really funny because it was coming to Christmas and I was told not to tell my mum not to buy any chocolates for Christmas. And the reason being, when it gets close to Christmas, the people in the warehouse, they would deliberately drop the bottles of had the chocolates in, the jars had the chocolates in, and that all go into one big box. Then come Christmas, all them chocolates would be shared out. Now I ended up with about 4 carrier bags of chocolates to take home. But now it's just it's a car wash of all things. But part of it is anyway. So this used to be all fields. As you can see, so the other side of that housing estate I walked through, where they're building the houses on the bus depot. I used to live in this street, and this here was where I lived. Many people tell by the accent, but I was actually born in Halifax, and for I think it was the first 3 years lived at Summersby Bridge. And so she came back to the northeast, moved in with my nana, lived at Penshaw for a while. Then she's got this flat, which at the time was above her hairdressers. So outdoor toilet, tin bath in front of the fire. So for the toilet we used to get newspapers and tie them up in little squares and put holes through, and with one string through the holes and take it down, and that used to be our toilet paper. But look at it now, it's just all changed. Well, you probably know what I'm going to see again. This used to be all fields. It's all houses now, and that used to be a field full of horses. I know they battled for years and years to try and stop the builders building on it, but looks like they've lost the fight. So this path, which is called the Mains Walk, so every Sunday I see I used to live in that flat, and we used to get all the washing, come up this way, up the Mains Walk, go up my nana's, have our Sunday dinner, get all the washing done, and then come on back down. A lot of changes. So I'm going to go over there. I've got a story to tell you about the old pit houses and that. That's where some of my friends used to live. Before we go into Herrington Country Park, and then we go to Penshaw Monument. So I had a lot of friends living in these houses because the dads used to work at Herrington Pit. I always remember one year they actually built a huge bonfire. It was huge. They had all the old sleepers, don't know where they got the woods from. But again, I'm seeing it's huge, but I was only a little kid at the time, so it may not have been that big. But I do remember it's down here, a 5-engine parked up on bonfire night while I set the fire off. So for those who aren't from the UK, so the reason we celebrate bonfire night is because there's a bloke called Guy Fawkes and his mates try to blow up the Houses of Parliament. But I know a lot of the places I've showed you so far, it's a bit sad in a way because that was my childhood, my youth, where I used to knock about and play. But there's also some good things about this, because where we're heading now, this, believe it or not, used to be Herrington Pit. So I did try to get a job. I was really desperate, eventually trying to get work. My mum didn't want us to get a job in the pit, but in the end I did apply for a job and didn't tell her. But anyway, they knocked us back, refused, and a couple of months later the pit closed anyway, so I suppose that was fate. But when we had the pit, then they turned the pit into an open cast to roll it all up, and then after that we have the country park, which from what it used to be to what it is now is such a big difference, so much better. But we did used to play on the pit. I remember one year we were digging like a hole in the pit, then all of a sudden it caught fire, flames, so I wasn't expecting that. So this is about roughly, I think, trying to judge where it is. It's about roughly where the pit would have started going up, I think. So this would have been the top of the pit all those years ago. So there's a country park now, but the pit didn't go all the way over there. So there's a stream runs down on the other side of the stream. That used to be all fields. That's part of the park now. As you can see over there, where they're building all the houses, that should be all fields. I used to have horses in years ago. And there we have Penshaw Monument. And for those who believe in ghosts or don't believe in ghosts, there's a strange story to tell here, because when we were kids we played hide and seek here, and there's only one of us left to find, and the bush that we behind, I can't really see anymore, but there was a bush straight in that area. Anyway, we saw what we thought was him from behind the bush, so we all went to the bush, circled it, only to find nobody was there. And then all of a sudden we turned around and he was there roughly where I was standing. So there was no way he could have gotten behind that bush without us seeing him. So we don't know whether that was a ghost or not. But the story is that there was a young boy fell off the monument, and his ghost does roam the hill. So I did mention earlier on about the lamp and worm, which wrapped itself around Worm Hill down Fatfield, and then the Lord Lamp or something like that, he came along and fought the worm and chucked it up through the river. But the other folk story is it actually wrapped itself around Penshaw Monument 10 times. And again, probably the same Lord had a fight of it, chopped it up and chucked it in the river. But another folk story I heard, which I think was quite funny, was apparently the Lord went away to fight, and before he went he lowered everybody's taxes. Just whatever reason was in the folk story. But anyway, because he lowered the taxes, people were, well, that's nice of him, so we'll build Penshaw Monument for him when he returns. So anyway, he returns back after he's been away fighting wherever he was fighting, saw the monument, because he said, well, if that's where you're going to spend your tax cuts on, I'm going to put your taxes back up. So apparently that's what he did. Which I thought was quite funny, that story. But actually the true story is that was built in 1844 to honour John Lamton, who was, I think, the first Earl of Durham, or something like that. And he's supposed to be a copy of, I don't know how to pronounce it, I think it was Hepatutus in Athens or something like that, I think it's called. A bit of a strange one, I can't really pronounce it. I'll have to Google that one and put it for you. Anyway. So here we have Penshaw Monument, which is a Class 1 listed building. Many years ago, most college students were silent because of the pit. So we can see the new pieces being put in. Ones that they took out. I'm pretty sure they must have pumped hundreds and hundreds of tons of concrete or whatever it was under the foundations. Looks like there's a fire smouldering down there, but you do get some quite spectacular views from up here. You can also see the country park from here, looking out. You can see right across to Durham Cathedral. Although you can't do it now, but late 70s, 80s, we had a really bad winter, loads of snow, and this quarry here, the snow just came right out. So what me and my friends used to do, we used to come run up here because there's no snow here. We'd come running up and just jump off the edge of the quarry into the snow drifts. It used to be great fun. So I've cut down from the monument and now in the woods. So nice little walk. So I did phone the fire brigade at the fire so they know about it. So I'll just come out to sort that out. So I'm now heading off down to the river. Going to go down by Coxgreen and then cut across the bridge down there and go into the park on the other side, which was another place I used to play as a kid. And I've got some stories to tell you about that one as well. This looks nice. Look at all the wildflowers growing in the trees, getting the green buds on. So here we are, Coxgreen. So before they built the footbridge, I don't know what that could have actually been it. A little boat used to be the only way around here across the river. And I have seen an old picture, I don't know where I saw it, but instead of all these trees around here, it was just a pile of white, I think it was asbestos from the old cave factory. So it's probably, well, it has been all cleaned up now. I think that's what it was. Thought I'd come along show you this house well, which is built in 1895. Look at that gunk at the bottom. So I suppose in the day it was drinkable, but don't think I'd drink it now. I know I've talked a lot about how a lot of the places I've been to today where I used to grow up, where I used to play, are now just housing estates, where the first job I had when I left the Royal Marines in the buses is now just going to be a housing estate. And I suppose, well, it has been all cleaned up now. I think that's what it was. So I suppose in the day it was drinkable, but don't think I'd drink it now. So I know I've talked a lot about how a lot of the places I've been to today where I used to grow up, where I used to play, are now just housing estates, where the first job I had when I left the Royal Marines in the buses is now just going to be a housing estate. but there has been some good improvements. So see, you've got the pit which I used to play on, that's now the country park, and this is also an old park. This used to be a cape, used to be asbestos. This was just all wasteland, but they've done a good job of restoring the land here. So we're going to go up to the pond. So as a kid we used to call it the Corgi pond. I saw a sign back there saying it's called Patterson Pond, but I still call it Corgi pond because that's what I called it when I was a kid. So this is what we used to call the Corgi pond. I'll keep a distance from this one after I've had that notice. But when I was a kid, this used to be absolutely like a dump really. It used to have like high mounds of like white stuff which we used to think was just pretend was snow, and we'd play on it. And for the pond itself we used to build rafts. We used to go and sail out in the pond on the rafts. But unknown to us, because over that way you had the old cave factory. I think they used to do asbestos and that, and I think all the white stuff that built up what was around here was whatever was left over from the cave factory. But as you can see, they've done a very good job of now tidying it all up. It looks really good. This used to be the old railway line. They used to go over Victoria Viaduct. Victoria Viaduct was built between 1836 and 1838. So not bad, it's taken 2 years to build it. But when I was a kid, we used to come across here, even though there used to be trains just go over it. Because used to have like 2 sets of lines in them days. So when the train come along, you saw the little turrets on the top. So we would just stand in the turrets and let the train go past, but hide, so nobody could see you. But then it went down to just a one line, and now it's no lines. It's just this. So it just goes to show how much things change over the years. Some for the good, I suppose some for the bad. I mean, see, a lot of my childhood memories are now just housing estates, you know, really. But if you're still watching, thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure showing you around my old haunts where I used to knock about as a kid, and I will catch you next time. So bye.